Right, in this video we're going to be looking at climate change and education as different sources of market failure and discussing why they are types of market failure. So the definition of market failure, we've looked at this in other slides, it occurs when an unregulated market, so a market without government intervention, fails to allocate resources in a manner that's going to maximise the well-being of society. So you need to put the unregulated part into your answer. And this will lead to an over-allocation of some goods and services, and generally that's goods and services that have negative externalities, and an under-allocation of other goods and services, and that includes public goods, merit goods, and goods with positive externalities, which in a manner that reduces the overall national well-being. So the first market failure we're going to look at is education. And this question here is a question that students struggled with last year, so I wanted to focus on this in particular. A significant percentage of government expenditure is on education. Explain how the market for education is an example of a market failure and how the government intervenes in the provision of secondary school education to overcome this failure. So education is an example of market failure, and it's an example of market failure because it is a merit good with positive externalities. So first thing to remember, and this is a common mistake, education is not a public good. In a free market, education would be provided. There would be private schools, there would be people that go to school, and they would be paying lots and lots of money to go there. So there would be private schools that would provide education for people, but they would do that at a heavy price. So there would be $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 to go to school. It would probably cost up to $100,000. Okay, even the private schools in Australia do get subsidised by the government. So even if you go to a private school, the government is still intervening in that market. So education is a type of market failure because it is considered to have positive externalities and would be under-allocated in a free market. Without government intervention, not enough people would go to school. It would be under-allocated. Now, when you're talking about the positive externality of education, the positive externalities aren't the things that you're going to get out of it as the student. Okay? The two people involved in the transaction are the school and the student. So you go to school because it's going to provide you, the opportunity to get an education, to develop hopefully the opportunity to get a higher income in the future. They are not the positive externalities of going to school. They are the benefits for you as the consumer. The positive externalities are the benefits of education for third parties. So not the school and not for you. So positive externalities are benefits that are enjoyed by people who do not pay for them directly. So it is felt that Australia as a whole will benefit from having a more educated community. And why is that the case? Well, there's many reasons. One, educated people are less likely to be involved in crime. Okay? And that's because educated people, if you look at lower income societies, a lot of people don't have the money to support themselves, they'll be more likely to steal. Okay? If you just purely based on the fact that they may need to survive. So education provides for lower crime rates. Educated people are likely to get higher jobs that pay a higher income, and therefore they're more likely to pay more tax. And that helps the government because we have a more productive society, we're generating more revenue, helping the government to stay in surplus. So you need to be able to explain what the positive externalities are for society of you getting an education. Now, when you decide to go to school, or when your parents decide to take you to school, they're not thinking about these positive externalities. They're not thinking, oh, good, you're going to pay more tax, or you'll be well, they may think about the crime element, but they're definitely not going to be thinking about what their main idea of you getting educated is the benefits that it's going to provide for you in the future. So what happens is not enough people would get educated because they don't think about the positive externalities of them getting educated. So people would not be willing to pay the higher price to get an education. So what does the government do to make sure that the supply of education is more in line with what it should be to benefit society? Well, a couple of things. Firstly, they provide public schools. Okay? They provide public schools for people that don't want to go to private schools or can't afford to go to private schools, so more people get an education. Secondly, and this is the main one, they have a minimum school leaving age. You can't leave school in Victoria until you're 16 years of age. That is a way to ensure that everyone gets at least a basic or a year 10 level of education. Okay? And thirdly, they also fund private schools. Okay? They provide subsidies for private schools to ensure that people don't need to pay as much even to go to your private schools. Okay? So education, a positive externality, under-allocated. You need to be able to explain what the positive externality is and make sure that it's not the benefit for you, it's the benefit for society of lower crime, higher taxes, for instance, people who work with more educated people might find themselves on higher incomes, so that's another benefit. And how does the government step in? Well, higher school leaving age, provision of public schools, subsidise private schools. Okay? And here's an example of subsidising for education by subsidising the consumer, and it causes the demand to shift to the right, and therefore the level of education is at this point here, or this point here, instead of this point here where the free market would allocate. If the subsidy was given to the supplier, then the supply curve would shift to the right, but we would still end up at a higher point at around here. Thanks for listening.